The fall of Nicholas and Eleanor Caesar. It is the middle of December 1989. The air in Bucharest bites with a sharp winter chill. In Palace Square, more than 50,000 people are gathered. Workers, students, civil servants, many brought directly from their factories and offices, others dragged from their schools. Some have been standing in the cold for hours, waiting for a man who has ruled them for nearly a quarter of a century, Nicholas Caesar, the supreme leader of Romania. For years he has been celebrated in orchestrated parades, his image plastered across buildings and banners. But now, whispers of rebellion hang in the air. Just days earlier, in the western city of Timișoara, protests had erupted after the attempted removal of a dissident priest, Lawrence Tokes. Caesar's soldiers opened fire on the demonstrators, killing dozens, perhaps hundreds. News of the massacre spread like wildfire, igniting a movement that no regime could contain. In an effort to reassert control, Caesar called for a massive rally in Bucharest, to be broadcast live on national television. He imagined a sea of loyal faces chanting his name, proof that his people still loved him. Instead, it would become the greatest mistake of his life. As he stepped out onto the balcony of the Central Committee building, loudspeakers blasted the sound of cheering crowds, recordings meant to disguise the silence below. But in the sea of humanity that filled the square, the faces were cold and blank. Then, amid the hollow applause, real shouts rose from deep within the crowd, uncoordinated, raw, defiant. Caesar faltered mid-sentence. The camera shook as the operator, following orders, tilted his lens skyward to avoid showing the chaos unfolding below. It was the moment when a nation, after decades of fear, began to find its voice. The security guards pushed the protesters back, and Caesar, trembling with disbelief, tried to continue. His words turned desperate. Promises of wage increases, higher pensions, sudden gifts from a ruler who no longer understood the world around him. But the crowd had stopped listening. When the speech ended, they refused to go home. "Down with Caesar!" they cried, the chant echoing through the streets of Bucharest. That night, the regime struck back. Tanks rolled through the capital. The secret police, Caesar's enforcers, opened fire. Snipers took positions on rooftops. By dawn, the streets were stained red. Fire hoses washed the blood from the asphalt. Caesar believed the uprising had been crushed. In truth, it was only beginning. By morning, workers across Romania abandoned their factories and marched toward Bucharest. Something had changed. The army, once the iron backbone of Caesar's power, began to waver. Soldiers refused orders. Some turned their weapons around and joined the people. Inside the Central Committee building, Caesar convened an emergency meeting. But the sounds of revolution, shouts, gunfire, the roar of a crowd, were already echoing through the marble halls. Moments before the mob burst inside, he ordered a helicopter to the roof. Pale, shaking, clinging to each other, Nicholas and Eleanor Caesar fled into the gray December sky. The helicopter carried them first to their residence in Snagov, just north of the capital. From there, Caesar tried frantically to summon loyal troops. None came. When the pilot warned that all flights had been grounded and any aircraft defying the order would be shot down, they were forced to land near Târgoviște. The dictator of Romania and his wife, once among the most powerful couples in Eastern Europe, now stood by the side of a country road with 2 bodyguards and no plan. They hijacked a passing car driven by a local mechanic who, terrified, agreed to help them. As they drove, the radio played reports of the revolution's triumph. The Caesars were finished. The mechanic delivered them to an agricultural institute on the outskirts of town, where the director promptly locked them in a room and called the police. At dawn on Christmas Day, 1989, a military tribunal convened in the Târgoviște barracks. The trial lasted less than 2 hours. The charges were grave: genocide, the destruction of the national economy, abuse of power, and the theft of over $1 billion from the Romanian people. Caesar refused to recognize the court. insisting he was still the rightful president of Romania. But the verdict was preordained. Both he and Eleanor were found guilty and sentenced to death by firing squad. When soldiers came to bind their hands, they protested. "We will not run," Eleanor said. But the ropes were tied anyway. They were led into the icy courtyard, past a wall riddled with bullet holes. Eleanor cursed their captors. Nicholas began to sing the Internationale, the anthem of the workers he had long betrayed. Seconds later, a burst of automatic gunfire ended the Caesar era forever. The next day, Romanian television aired footage of the execution, grainy images of the two bodies lying in the snow, proof that the dictatorship was over. Across the nation, people wept, shouted, prayed. In total, nearly 1,000 people died in the December Revolution. But freedom had returned to Romania for the first time in more than 4 decades. In May 1990, the country held its first free elections since before the Second World War. Over the years that followed, Romania joined NATO and later the European Union, emerging from the shadows of totalitarianism to begin the long, painful work of rebuilding. And in the haunting silence of that December morning, amid the ruins of a crumbling regime, the people of Romania reclaimed their history, their dignity, and their voice.